understand. I remember when it got reported that internal polls had Joe Biden getting absolutely blown out and he still wouldn't resign. And you're like, what do you mean internal polls? Because the external polls didn't have that as the situation. So why the hell do you have internal polls that are, whatever. But all I'm saying is that the people making that argument always point to these very specific MAGA Republican polls. If the polls, broadly speaking, tell us anything right now, they tell us that this is the most unpopular war in American history, that Donald Trump is at his lowest approval rating ever. Donald Trump right now has an approval rating slightly higher than George W. Bush in 2008. After lying the country into two disastrous wars and tanking the economy. And the longer this goes, and if there's no win at all to show for it, he might fall well below him. So it is like, look, again, it's true that most of the American people aren't watching podcasts or whatever. It's all, there is a big base of Americans who aren't tapped in the way some of us are, but
you're my Cronkite, Dave. I'll say.
Well, I try. I mean, I think someone's got to fill that role, and I'll take it if I have to. But I'm just saying that all of the evidence would suggest that the podcasters have their thumb exactly on the pulse, and that they're exactly where the American people are. And then of course, all of these, and there's a lot of differences between a lot of these different shows, but if you take, say, the four that Trump blasted, right, which was Tucker, Megyn, Candace, and Alex Jones, those are big shows, right? But then if you take also the Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, Andrew Schultz, whatever, Tim Dillon, okay, you can say that, they don't matter at all, but you seem to think they mattered back in 2024. Why exactly don't they matter? Why does... Mark Levin the other day said, the internet isn't real life. And you're like, but what is radio and cable
is this 2005?
Well, but why? What do you mean? Is your show real life, but a show on the internet isn't? Like, if Breaking Points is on YouTube and Spotify and whatever, but the Mark Levin show is on Fox News. Like, at this point, and I genuinely, Mark Levin may not know this. Donald Trump and Mark Levin are 90. You know what I mean? Like, but the thing is, they're all things that we just watch. Like, they're all things, we watch these shows, we watch them on our TV or our computer or our phone or our tablet. That's also how we watch TV. They're all equally real life. The only thing that matters is who's watching what more. And then and then the obvious answer to that is, they're watching these shows. shows a lot more. So all of the evidence is like in the marketplace, these shows are the biggest shows. In terms of the polls, this is how the people feel. Where do you pull out of that the coalition is completely fine and everything's okay? Yeah, a lot of Republicans still support Donald Trump. A lot of Democrats would have voted for Joe Biden even after he shit his pants on national television. You know, that means nothing.
That's such a good point. No, that's such a good point. It's because we're trapped in lesser of two evil politics, which, you know, I think people like you and I have recognized that for a long time. But to the normie average American, I think there's a record level of independence because the democratization of the media climate has opened up. Like, even the fact that you said your point, which I would quibble with, maybe it's semantics about terrorism or violence about the United States, but we don't have to open up that can of worms. The fact that you said that on Pierce's show.
Let's fight about that. What would you possibly quibble with, Emily? You've sat next to Ryan Grimm for far too long to have any problem
Ryan is a terrorist.
With me saying No, yeah, well, that's for personal reasons. People don't know about that. That's private. Ryan is a terrorist in his personal life, but publicly he's against it.
I think
I'm starting a rumor.
It's not even a rumor at this point.
In what world are you going to really tell me that the level of like wars of aggression and choice, and for whatever bullying reason we feel like we are so, like if you were to sit down and read like the just war theory of Christianity, how outside the realm of that the American warfare state has been. Forget even just saying post World War II. I'm not even going to get into Dresden and nuclear bombs and all of that shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But post World War II, where there's never even been a debatable self-defense conflict. You're going to say just lighting up innocent civilians like that?
Yeah.
Is it really? Well, we don't call it terrorism. If we don't, then it's just actually, people accuse me of making like an emotional argument, but actually the only way to deny that is to have a purely emotional, but it's America and it's us and we can't really be the bad guys like that. If anyone else did that, we'd call it out for exactly what it is. Pure terrorism. Forget, listen, just think about, no, Emily, stop it. I'm going to talk over you and I insist we fight and I insist I win this
I don't
fight.
think you've ever been to the Strait of Hormuz.
God damn it, you got me. All right, I'm going to go. I was doing really good until that.
It's over.
And that is the checkmate point that you can never come back from. But literally, just think about what Ryan was telling you just the other day about going to Cuba. I was talking about this on my show. I've been singing Ryan and Jeremy's praises for weeks because they're reporting over at Drop Site. It's just been like phenomenal. But going down to Cuba and watching NICU nurses tell you about how they have to rush over to the babies on ventilators and start hand pumping them. I mean, what is that? It's not an attack against a military target. It's not anything like that. No one in America is how sick our country is. How God, like, oh my God, we should all pray that the God of the Bible who judged nations collectively doesn't exist anymore, or he grew up since then and like doesn't do that. The fact that as a society, no one even ever attempted to even pretend to argue that Cuba posed some threat to us or that like we had to do this to them because reasons. They just went, this is Marco Rubio's bank shot. He wanted to hit Venezuela and then take out Cuba. So we literally just starved the civilian population of energy. And if this is terrorism, what is terrorism? This is too like, how can you argue with that?
No, yeah. So what I was saying earlier is that it's like I was saying, it might be semantic, but I think terrorism is a very particular form of warfare that is meant to wage war by instilling abject terror in a civilian population. And we can argue that the consequence of American violence throughout the Cold War and all of these proxy conflicts had that. I think terrorism is waged not for power, but is waged to specifically use terror, fear as a weapon of war. So hold on.
The stated goal of the entire American sanctions regime, and I mean this entirely, which is on its own, probably the biggest warfare state that's ever existed. If you consider sanctions an act of war, which we certainly would consider if anyone ever applied them to us. The entire stated goal of it always has been to put so much pressure on the civilian population that they overthrow the government. And so if you're going to split hairs between scaring the civilization or starving the civilization into being so desperate that they have to overthrow. I mean, I just think at this point, like, to me, a fair definition of terrorism is intentionally targeting civilians in order to achieve a political outcome. And if that's what you're talking about,
that's fair.
It brings me no joy to say this, but like, who's the worst at that? And that's just, I don't know. Like that is the entire thing with all of these military campaigns. They're not, and that doesn't mean every war ever, but every war that we've been talking about in my lifetime in America is that.
Yeah. No, I still think that. So I still stand by the distinction of terrorism being waged in a particular like non-conventional form of warfare. But actually, I agree with everything that you just outlined, and I think it goes back to what we're discussing with Iran, which is that Iran is downstream of Cold War post-nuclear conflicts, and the reason that the United States has justified in Chile with Allende making the economy scream, that's from a Nixon memo. The reason that's been, I just wrote about this last week, the reason that's been part of our accepted warfare for so long, and this is exactly what Tucker Carlson is now questioning, like in his monologue last Monday, this is what he's rightfully calling attention to. This is post-nuclear politics. And in the United States, we have just accepted that because Cuba might be a proxy of the Soviet Union and might obliterate Florida, the southern United States, and maybe the entire country because the Russians get a foothold on this tiny island 90 miles off our coast, then it totally justifies starving civilians. It totally justifies making the economy in Chile scream because we want access to minerals and we don't want the Soviets to have access to those minerals. And it's a sickness that has just been utterly corrosive to the Western soul over the last 100 years. So I don't disagree with that at all, David. I actually think Iran is a great example of the problem that we found ourselves in because they remember 1953. You hear the boomers talk, I remember 1979, I remember 1979. The Iranian boomers are saying, I remember 1953. And if you think this situation, however many civilians have already been killed, the girls' school is going to make this situation better in the long run for the safety and security of Israel, for the safety and security of the United States, that to me seems completely insane. And like we're refusing to learn a lesson from the last 80 years of history.
Yeah. It's so, it's such a crazy situation to be in. At least me personally, I feel this way, and I'm sure a lot of us do. But like, so you're in a situation where I've been doing this for a while now, and with more people listening lately, but I've been doing what I do for years, and basically arguing against the entire global war on terrorism and argue. I mean, I've been arguing against the war in Iran for 20 years. Like this was always the entire time I've been obsessed with all this stuff. This has been the war that the neocons were flirting with and all of this. And it's such a, you go through the whole thing where like the argument just becomes so overwhelming. And then you just win, and everyone kind of admits, like, yes, okay, this is true. I mean, John McCain in his memoir wrote, like, we really shouldn't have done Iraq. Like, even John McCain had to go, okay, this was a mistake. So it's like consensus, and you're like, okay, fine, we won, we got consensus, and then we're just going to do another one, and it's right
because they just keep taking their mulligans.
Yes, like, but and look, people can say, oh, this is different in this way and that way. Look, this is different in a lot of different ways, a lot of bad ways up front. There's never been an opponent in the global war on terrorism who could do what Iran's already done to us. Like, so there's many differences. And if the hawks want to argue that one of the differences is also that there's a big liberal base inside Iran who loves freedom, and okay, maybe I don't know. I don't know enough to really know whether that's right or wrong. But I do know that after winning the entire argument, all of these people will just completely forget the lessons that were embedded in winning that entire argument, which is like, look, like, again, just try for a second to be a human being and understand that the people on the other side are also human beings, and go like, okay, so think about it like this. even in America, in our much more superior, much more, Sam Harris, rational society, other than these crazy Islamists or something like that. Okay, think about how right-wingers felt about Joe Biden in America. Right-wingers hated, I think this is fair to say that speaking for the average Republican voter in America, basically viewed Joe Biden as essentially a criminal, someone who had been incredibly corrupt and was paying off his son and doing all types of shady things, who was senile, who was a deep state puppet, and by the way, who was not legitimately elected, had stolen the presidency from the rightful president of the United States of America. Literally, the majority of Republicans viewed him as that. Now, let's just say in the middle of Joe Biden's presidency, if China had invaded and attempted to overthrow Joe Biden and install a Chinese sock puppet government here, that same right-winger would have picked up his gun and fought to his death to protect Joe Biden. Because there's no way some foreigner is going to come in here and tell us what our government is. That's the way America is. Why do we think we have a monopoly on that? You know what I mean? Why do we think that no other people are going to have that same, there was as you know, I'm sure, Emily, there was in the late 1930s, there was and into the early 40s, there was the America First Committee, which is a huge non-interventionist, anti-American involvement in World War II organization. They had I think over 600,000 members in 1939. It was like a huge organization. And much of the country agreed with them. And then Pearl Harbor happened. And it was over. They all just half of them joined the military effort. Because once you got hit, the conversation was over. We got hit. We are now at war with you. And think about 9/11 and how crazy we went after that. Why do we think we have a monopoly on being the people who, like, when you get hit, would be like, well, no, screw you. Whatever internal problems we have, we're not. And so, to me, I don't care. Any of these expats could say only 10% of people support the government. At this point, I bet 90% of them support us not being involved.
Well, yeah, and this is what Tucker was getting to, is basically the only way that you can justify this is by saying it's power, that the United States is more powerful, therefore we can do this to the little guys because we are the power. And just before we go to break, I'll say that's why I'm a no nuke person. I'm not 100% that this is the best solution, but the globe has shrunken to the point where, because of ballistic missile range and nuclear range, every single country in the world shares a border now with nuclear weapons. And so Iran looks at Israel, looks at the United States, looks at North Korea, looks at Saudi Arabia, and you're telling them, no, you can't have access to this powerful weapon. You can make the argument about the good guys versus the bad guys, but that's contingent on explaining to them why they're the bad guys. So good luck. Good luck. All right, Dave, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back with more. First, though, Cozy Earth. One of my favorite ways to relax at home lately has been with Cozy Earth. I talk about this a lot. It's hard to go to bed after having these conversations. They get you all hyped up and angry sometimes. But if you haven't tried the robes and the slippers over at Cozy Earth, you are missing out. Their robes are so soft. They're perfect for slow mornings, after you take a shower, or just relaxing at night. The fabric is breathable, lightweight, and incredibly comfortable. It's the kind of robe that you put on and then you immediately feel more relaxed. Isn't that the best? And their slippers might be the best part too. They slip on instantly, and they have this like plush shearling lining with actually supportive footbeds. So they're warm, they're comfortable, and they're easy to wear around the house all day. Plus, Mother's Day is coming up, so be nice to your moms. Cozy Earth makes a great gift, something that your mom will actually use and appreciate on the big day. Those are the gifts that make a difference, right? Here's the best part. Cozy Earth backs everything with a 100-night sleep trial and a 10-year warranty, so you or your mom can try it completely risk-free. Go to CozyEarth.com and use my code Emily for 20% off. That's CozyEarth.com, promo code Emily for 20% off. And if you see the post-purchase survey, please mention you heard about Cozy Earth from the show. All right, we're back now with Dave Smith. He's comedian and host of Part of the Problem. Dave, I did want to get your thoughts on, what do we have to call this, like Jesus Gate? Today, Donald Trump, he deleted the post. He deleted the post about, we'll show it in just one moment, but basically Donald Trump posted an image, it was like a boomer Facebook meme of him that sure looked like he had inserted himself as Jesus into a painting of a sick person being healed. There it is on the screen. He's in like robes. He's got like beacons of light behind him, all kinds of good stuff happening in this picture. So there's all kinds of outrage, predictably so. Here's how Trump explains deleting it in front of the press today at the White House.
And did you post that picture of yourself depicted as Jesus Christ?
Well, it wasn't depicted. It was me. I did post it, and I thought it was me as the doctor, and had to do with Red Cross as a Red Cross worker there, which we support. And only the fake news could come up with that one. So I just heard about it, and I said, how did they come up with that? It's supposed to be me as a doctor making people better, and I do make people better. I make people a lot better.
Dave, how much did you cry about this post last night?
Well, listen, man, I mean, it is just wild. Donald Trump, there is something so crazy that I don't know, maybe I can't be the only one who's noticed this, right? But there has been this change, like from Donald Trump at the very beginning, his first term, there'd be this thing. I'm sure you saw this a bunch, Emily, where like there'd be a reporter asking Donald Trump, like the dumbest, most bad faith, dishonest question about like Russiagate or some stupid thing. And you'd be like, oh, this is totally like, you're not even asking a question. You're like running an op against the president. It's such a weird thing. And then Donald Trump would just respond with like, you're a fat pig and blah, blah, blah. And there'd be like a thing where you're kind of like, yeah, like just smash. But then in the second term, it turned into this thing where like journalists just ask the most reasonable question. And like it's just constantly like, hey, you said yesterday you were going to release the Epstein files. And you said today there's no such thing as the Epstein files. And he's like, your husband isn't attracted to you. You're disgusting. And you're like, wait, what? This isn't cool anymore because that was kind of reasonable. And I don't know, it's just too like, how is this supposed to even be the answer? How I don't know, all of this is just it's been a very surreal moment to live through. What are you asking about, the specifics of what he said there?
Well, I mean, I think, to me, it's like amazing to see I'm a evangelical Christian. It's amazing to see some of my fellow conservative Christians look at that post from Donald Trump and these are people who support Trump, any sense of like moral surprise or shock, because this is the guy, what did he say? That he hates his opponents. He said that at Charlie Kirk's funeral. One time he talked about his little wine and crackers. Like this was back in 2015. He said he doesn't ask God for forgiveness. I mean, he's not a Christian beacon of morality. And so to be surprised by this, or shocked by it. I mean, I guess I think it's good he took it down, but there's a 0% chance he thought it was a doctor.
Yeah, I mean, that was a wild for him to go like, yeah, what? You got Jesus out of that? That's crazy. I don't know where did anyone think that? I don't know. There's a really sad thing. I remember watching through the rise of wokeism as that kind of swept through the like kind of liberal establishment. I remember always having this it was like kind of like a sad feeling where I would watch all these people who I really admired, especially in the comedy world, because I had like been coming up as a comedian, and there were people like, I know that young people, this is going to be the craziest thing to ever say to you, but like Stephen Colbert was funny once.
Oh, dude, Strangers with Candy?
Dude, he was an amazing talent, dude. The Colbert Report was
Dana
amazing.
Carvey show?
Dude,
Stephen Colbert on the Dana Carvey show? He was
great on the Daily Show, on the Stephen Colbert show, on the Dana Carvey show. He was just like an incredible talent. Like there were a lot of people like this who were really good, but like then, I don't know, some type of social force just kind of cast a spell on them, and they just had to conform to this weird religion that they had like become a part of. And in a lot of ways, it was sad, and I don't know. And I feel like a lot of those people, like you're saying, like the Christians who will still support Donald Trump after this, I guess they've fallen into some spell where for so long they believe that he was their only savior. And obviously, in terms of politically what Donald Trump represented, he was the greatest enemy of the very anti-Christian force in this country. And so I guess they feel like they have, but I don't know, at a certain point, at least I feel like if you're in the world that me and you are in, where our job is largely talking about these things publicly for other people to watch, then come on, we got to just tell the truth about this. Like, what is this? This is so despicable. I mean, so like, just disgusting. The president just being so flippant that on Easter he's threatening genocide, and then making these kind of comments about Allah, and then these posts about Jesus. Like, again, it's weird because I know like in a way, like the knock on me is that who the fuck am I? Which is a fair enough knock on me, right? Like that's the biggest knock on me is like, you're some comedian, like you're not an expert. Who the fuck are you? Like you're some shit talking comedian in a hoodie who wants to show up to like the biggest debate in politics and like, okay,
no hood today
enough.
though. No hood today.
There you go. I respect the after party, but
right.
business
casual.
But like, okay, fair enough. That's the knock on me. But then, okay, but am I the only one who goes, but like the president of the United States of America, the commander in chief, like, okay, even for me, I don't care about formalities. I'm not, people I really, really admire. Like I'm a real student of conservative thought. Like I love all of that. I've read every Pat Buchanan book, and like he would get real mad if you didn't have a big enough flag pin on, or if when Obama took his jacket off in the Oval Office, Pat Buchanan would be like, "Oh, it's not," I don't have any of that in me. But could the president not, be the most vulgar, just horrible human being in the planet? That seems to be a reasonable request, and it's sad. It's sad watching this happen.
Oh, totally unreasonable, actually. You mentioned.
You're right. You are right.
Well, actually, before we leave, there was a lot of chatter last week. We were talking about Alex Jones earlier. There were some people, Alex was one of them, calling for potential 25th Amendment, saying Trump is losing it. Dave, again, do I think there's something that seems to have escalated because we're now at war and maybe he's feeling extra defensive and desperate of his image? Probably. Do you think this is a 25th Amendment situation where his grasp on reality is slipping? To me, again, like I look at this and I don't think it's not surprising to me. It doesn't shock me. I think it's really bad. It does seem like it's on another level. It doesn't seem to me like he's going insane.
You said it does or doesn't seem like he's going
It doesn't.
insane.
I feel like he's always been on this level of crazy.
No, I know. Look, I mean, I don't know. This is total just speculation, so I don't know exactly what's happened, but it does feel like something is different. A flip has been switched. I always try my best to like find the least conspiratorial kind of like answer to all of, like, what is the simplest answer for why all of this is happening? And I guess I would say that I think there was a big moment last summer when Donald Trump hit us with the 1-2 punch of the 12-day war. war and burying the Epstein files. And that really, it shed off a big part of his base. And they try not to admit this, but the truth is that at that point, a huge part of the Trump coalition went, yo, this is not what we signed up for. And perhaps, and maybe I'm guilty of some of this, but perhaps that changed the incentive structure for Donald Trump in a way that was not advantageous for any of us. Like, it was like, hey, I've already lost those guys, so I got to at least keep these guys. Now, I think there's also something about Washington, D.C., like, you know, you know how I don't even know if this is true anymore, because like politicians don't even pretend to have ever read a book anymore. But if you, and you're young, Emily, this is your problem. You're very, very young. But if you were around earlier, you know, they used to like congressmen used to talk about like Keynes, like be like, we like John Maynard Keynes and his school on economics or something like that. But it's not like any of them ever really sat down and read F.A. Hayek and then read Keynes and then went, oh, I think Keynes makes better arguments. The reason why he was a popular kind of like intellectual figure is because his arguments was that government should have a lot more power. And then so everyone in government went, oh, yeah, we really like that argument. In the same way that the fucking, you know, that all the weapons companies, you know, fucking fund all the neocon think tanks. It's not because they really believe in greater Israel. It's just because they're like, oh, you said we have to fight 7 wars? Interesting opinion. Let me give you a little bit more money to, you know, like it's all business essentially. And so like in the same way, I think when you're in Washington, D.C., right, like there's this dynamic where a president, so it's very strange because people go, is the president the most powerful position ever? Or is it not a powerful position? And the truth is that if you're the president of the United States of America and you want to swim with the current, you're the most powerful human being who's ever existed in the history of the world. You can touch anywhere in the world. You can launch, as we've seen, you can launch any war. The best thing Congress could do is write you an angry letter and go, within 90 days, you better report to us and tell us what you're doing. And if you don't, you don't, because it doesn't really matter. You can launch any war. You could bomb a wedding in Yemen or a city in any part of the world, right? If you're a president who wants to roll back the military-industrial complex, you have zero power. Zero. You're not capable of doing it. So if you want to go with the warfare state, you're the biggest, baddest emperor of all time. If you want to go against it, you are just a failure in history. That's just, and I think at a certain point, Donald Trump, who is motivated by more than anything else, being the most tremendous person who's ever lived, went, fuck it, I'm going to go with it rather than against it. And I think Venezuela was just, you know, the greatest disaster of Venezuela is that it worked out well. And
yeah, it's a really good point.
And then that just gave him the confidence to be ripe for Netanyahu to fucking convince him. Now, that being said, I'm not against anyone speculating about more than that, because it still seems so hard to believe that he could possibly be fooled into thinking that this wouldn't happen. You know, I didn't post it, but I'm going to post it. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to post. I found a Scott Horton article from 2005.
Damn.
And Scott Horton, because at the time the Bush administration is talking about how we should invade Iran. And Scott Horton in 2005 goes, but they will close the Strait of Hormuz and hit all of our military bases in the region. And they have the missile capacity to do this and this and this. And then it's just so amazing to watch like them today. Like, so look, that
Antiwar.com, Scott Horton. Yeah, head over there.
Just the absolute best foreign policy guy in the goddamn country. But so, you know, it makes you wonder, really? No one would have told him? Even in that New York Times piece, everyone's no one really tells him, don't do this. You know, like, don't. And it is hard to believe. I don't know. It's very hard to believe that that's the case.
Yeah, it sucks. It's the best I can come up with. Let's move on to Eric Swalwell, who will not be governor of California, much to the disappointment of the the Golden State. Here's Eric Swalwell. We're going to go through a little timeline here. It'll be fun. So here's Eric Swalwell on Friday after this was a San Francisco Chronicle story had dropped. There was a CNN one which had either just dropped or was on the cusp of dropping. S3.
These allegations of sexual assault are flat false. They're absolutely false. They did not happen.
Looks like a Duke lacrosse player.
And I will fight them with everything that I have. They also come on the eve of an election where I have been the frontrunner candidate for governor in California. I do not suggest to you in any way that I'm perfect or that I'm a saint. I have certainly made mistakes in judgment in my past, but those mistakes are between me and my wife. And to her, I apologize deeply for putting her in this position. I also apologize to you if in any way you have doubted your support for me. But I think you know who I am.
So he's battling, obviously, claims that range from outright rape to sexual assault and harassment. So I recommend, Megan went through point by point on today's Megyn Kelly show, all of the allegations and what we should make of them in the court of public opinion. Alvin Bragg did open an investigation into Eric Swalwell because one of the allegations is in New York, and there was a house ethics probe opened, which is interesting because on Sunday, Eric Swalwell, after doubling down on the video you just saw, F6, he suspended his gubernatorial campaign. Then today, the House Ethics Committee opens this probe into Eric Swalwell. He announces F7. He's actually leaving Congress altogether. He resigned from Congress this evening. So, Dave, I think in a way, this harkens back to simpler times when sex scandals destroyed people's congressional careers. It sounds kind of quaint. On the other hand, some of these allegations, like it's very much the depths of Me Too. He said, she said, both people were really drunk. It sounds like there are allusions to maybe there being a date rape drug, but that's never said clearly. It's a tangled mess. Obviously, Eric Swalwell is adulterous and gross and was hitting on employees and making moves on employees, sleeping with employees. So I guess good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what actually happened here, and I haven't even like looked into it enough to even like formulate an opinion on all of this. I do think that, I don't know. I'm much more chauvinistic than I let on in real life. And I really do. This is why only married men of good moral character should be involved in politics at all. And that there just shouldn't be any of this. Like, listen, I'm not saying I'm a complete libertarian. People should be allowed to live whatever lifestyle they want to live, but keep that weird shit away from power. Like nobody in
I love the idea
ever...
of you saying that at a libertarian convention. I love the idea of you getting up in front of him.
I'm a libertarian, but I'm a day walker. Like I walk amongst the autistic libertarians, and then I walk amongst the normies during the day, and I try to bring the two together. It's not an easy job. Someone has to do it. But I will say there is something that I do think this is a big part of like the Epstein thing and just this cultural toothpaste that has come out of the tube that can never be put back in, that people just can't ignore how weird some of the people at the highest levels of power are. And how, like, you're like, wait, what is this story? What were you doing? Even if it's not, the worst allegation of it, you're like, but wait a minute, you're a guy who's like passing moral judgment on everyone else all day on cable news, but then this is your life. You just have to apologize to your wife publicly, but we're not going to know what exactly that means. I think that there's something where we find out that a lot of these people are really just very bizarre people with a lot of things that could kind of be compromised, or they're ripe to being compromised. And
well, he was literally compromised by the Chinese. I mean, the Fang Fang allegation, like he was like actually
and also just
before he was married,
it's just like on a very human level. Like, do you remember? So I remember like not that long ago. I don't know. I guess this was 2019 or something like that. But you remember when like MSNBC was trying to convince you that Stormy Daniels' lawyer had the it factor.
Avenatti.
And you're like, this guy is just, ooh, he's prosecuting the case again. And then remember, what was the guy who rode the skateboard out in Texas? Who they tried to tell you? Yeah, Beto O'Rourke. He's like incapable of doing it. So if you want to go with the warfare state, you're the biggest, baddest emperor of all time. If you want to go against it, you are just a failure in history. That's just, and I think at a certain point, Donald Trump, who is motivated by more than anything else, being the most tremendous person who's ever lived, went, fuck it, I'm going to go with it rather than against it. And I think Venezuela was just, the greatest disaster of Venezuela is that it worked out well. And
it's a really good point.
And then that just gave him the confidence to be ripe for Netanyahu to fucking convince him. Now, that being said, I'm not against anyone speculating about more than that, because it still seems so hard to believe that he could possibly be fooled into thinking that this wouldn't happen. I didn't post it, but I'm going to post it. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to post. I found a Scott Horton article from 2005.
Damn.
And Scott Horton, because at the time the Bush administration is talking about how we should invade Iran. And Scott Horton in 2005 goes, but they will close the Strait of Hormuz and hit all of our military bases in the region. And they have the missile capacity to do this and this and this. And then it's just so amazing to watch like them today. Like, so look, that
Antiwar.com, Scott Horton. Yeah, head over there.
Just the absolute best foreign policy guy in the goddamn country. But so, it makes you wonder, really? No one would have told him? Even in that New York Times piece, everyone's no one really tells him, don't do this. Don't. And it is hard to believe. I don't know. It's very hard to believe that that's the case.
Yeah, it sucks. It's the best I can come up with. Let's move on to Eric Swalwell, who will not be governor of California, much to the disappointment of the Golden State. Here's Eric Swalwell. We're going to go through a little timeline here. It'll be fun. So here's Eric Swalwell on Friday after this was a San Francisco Chronicle story had dropped. There was a CNN one which had either just dropped or was on the cusp of dropping. S3.
These allegations of sexual assault are flat false. They are absolutely false. They did not happen.
Looks like a Duke lacrosse player.
And I will fight them with everything that I have. They also come on the eve of an election where I have been the frontrunner candidate for governor in California. I do not suggest to you in any way that I'm perfect or that I'm a saint. I have certainly made mistakes in judgment in my past, but those mistakes are between me and my wife. And to her, I apologize deeply for putting her in this position. I also apologize to you if in any way you have doubted your support for me. But I think you know who I am.
So he's battling, obviously, claims that range from outright rape to sexual assault and harassment. So I recommend, Megan went through point by point on today's Megyn Kelly show, all of the allegations and what we should make of them in the court of public opinion. Alvin Bragg did open an investigation into Eric Swalwell because one of the allegations is in New York, and there was a house ethics probe opened, which is interesting because on Sunday, Eric Swalwell, after doubling down on the video you just saw, F6, he suspended his gubernatorial campaign. Then today, the House Ethics Committee opens this probe into Eric Swalwell. He announces F7. He's actually leaving Congress altogether. He resigned from Congress this evening. So, Dave, I think in a way, this harkens back to simpler times when sex scandals destroyed people's congressional careers. It sounds kind of quaint. On the other hand, some of these allegations, like it's very much the depths of Me Too. He said, she said, both people were really drunk. It sounds like there are allusions to maybe there being a date rape drug, but that's never said clearly. It's a tangled mess. Obviously, Eric Swalwell is adulterous and gross and was hitting on employees and making moves on employees, sleeping with employees. So I guess good riddance.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't know what actually happened here. And I haven't even like looked into it enough to even like formulate an opinion on all of this. I do think that, you know, I don't know. I'm much more chauvinistic than I let on in real life. And I really do. This is why only married men of good moral character should be involved in politics at all. And that there just shouldn't be any of this. Like, listen, I'm not saying I'm a complete libertarian. People should be allowed to live whatever lifestyle they want to live, but keep that weird shit away from power. Like nobody in
I love the
power
idea
ever,
of you saying that at a libertarian convention. I love the idea of you getting up in front of him.
I'm a libertarian, but I'm a day walker. You know, like I walk amongst the autistic libertarians, and then I walk amongst the normies during the day, and I try to bring the two together. It's not an easy job. Someone has to do it. But I will say there is something that I do think this is a big part of like the Epstein thing and just this cultural toothpaste that has come out of the tube that can never be put back in, that people just can't ignore how weird some of the people at like the highest levels of power are. And how, like, you're like, wait, what is this story? What were you doing? Even if it's not, you know, the worst allegation of it, you're like, but wait a minute, you're a guy who's like passing moral judgment on everyone else all day on cable news, but then this is your life. You just have to apologize to your wife publicly, but we're not going to know what exactly that means. I think that you know, there's something where we find out that a lot of these people are really just very bizarre people with a lot of things that could kind of be compromised, you know, or they're ripe to being compromised. And
well, he was literally compromised by the Chinese. I mean, the Fang Fang allegation, like he was like actually
and also just
before he was married,
it's just like on a very human level. Like, do you remember? Okay, so I remember like not that long ago. I don't know. I guess this was 2019 or something like that. But you remember when like MSNBC was trying to convince you that Stormy Daniels' lawyer had the it factor?
Avenatti.
And you're like, this guy is just, he's prosecuting the case again. And then remember, what was the guy who rode the skateboard out in Texas? Who they tried to tell you? Yeah, Beto O'Rourke. He's like the guy who people want. And you just be like, are you a real person or are you an alien impersonating a person? Who would possibly think? These are two of the most like strange, weird human beings ever. And you're trying to convince me that they're charismatic or something like that? I don't know. It's just very strange. This is not how normal people are.
Well, it's circular too, because Dems will say, well, you guys have Donald Trump to Republicans. And Republicans will say, yes, well, Eric Swalwell was Mr. Believe All Woman anti-Donald Trump. And you just go round and round and round until you realize that there's something so broken with the system that fewer good people ever want to enter it, because it takes such a disgusting person to be part of the system.
Yeah, well, that's true. But, could I just say on that, and I'm not trying to, I think of all the people who voted for Donald Trump, like people with public, or podcasts or whatever, I think I was amongst the first to like straight up say, like, I apologize for that. I was wrong for voting for him. I called for his impeachment. I got, at least back in the, on Breaking Points when the 12-day war first launched, I think. And even, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, I think it was before we dropped the bunker busters. I think it was already just when Israel launched the war. I was like, screw it, it's over. I'm the angry teenager that I always am. I hate him now. There's this thing where people would say forever that that the MAGA is a cult, or Trump supporters are like a cult-like following. And I also see right now a lot of people who have been like really calling people out who voted for Donald Trump or something like that. And, so I say this again from the position, which I understand is a weak position to argue from, where I'm already admitting that, like, yes, probably it was wrong to vote for Donald Trump, but also I'll just say some names here, but I've gotten into some public arguments with Kyle Kulinski and Mehdi Hassan and others like that, who, by the way, I'm not trying to fight with either of those guys. I don't agree with them on everything, but we sure do agree on some really important stuff. And but they're going around like constantly going like, hey, you voted for Donald Trump. Well, look at you, Joe Rogan. You're criticizing him now, but what do you think you voted for? And just like everyone who's, and this is just infuriating me. And I publicly went back and forth with Mehdi a little bit, and then we messaged privately a little bit, and like, we're cool and everything. But there's something about this where like, I said this publicly, and I'll say this again, that, when I remember, I was so anti-war, so hardcore anti-war, and I never voted for anyone. The only presidential candidate I ever voted for was Ron Paul. Like I have complete clean hands in terms of voting before 2024. And I remember just mourning the death of the anti-war left. Forever. It was like as soon as George W. Bush left and Obama came in, and the global war on terrorism just escalated and spread to multiple other theaters. Escalated in the theaters they were already in. He surged like tens of thousands of troops to Afghanistan, took out, Libya, Syria, Somalia, Yemen, like all of this. And they were just gone. And then when the destruction of Gaza started, they kind of all came back. And I was like, great. I never thought for 1 second that this would be the time to start lecturing everybody about how you voted for Joe Biden. And you should have known that Joe Biden was a lifelong Zionist, and Joe Biden was obviously going to do this. And then, like, the people who voted for Joe Biden, who admit that he committed a genocide, are like shaming everybody else for voting for Donald Trump. Like, let's just take a look at what actually happened here. The entire media apparatus that supported Donald Trump and got him his election victory turned on him over this war. So, hey, anti-war leftist, take the win. You know what I mean? Like, hey, that's awesome. That's awesome that they're not going along with this. You called them all cultists for so long. They're not cultists. They're turning on him over this. Let it happen. Why are you taking this opportunity to go I told you so?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I mean, I didn't vote for president in 2024, but that's because exactly of everything you were just saying. It's this like completely complicated mess of you're always evaluating the lesser of two evils. Like none of those people were, venerating Joe Biden, and people like you weren't venerating Donald Trump. It's just saying no. People have kids and families that they love, and they make decisions based on what they think is going to be the best. And there are some people who claim they're 100% right, and if you're not with me, you're evil. There are many people like that, but that's not you. And that's not a lot of people. That's certainly not Andrew Schultz and Joe Rogan and Tim Dillon. They certainly weren't in that camp.
But also, if you're, yes, I completely agree. And I'm just saying that if you're in the camp of really being against, like if you really care that like, oh shit, there's like innocent people dying and the world's going to be worse off because of this war, then if you look at people like Tim Dillon and Joe Rogan and Theo Vaughn and Andrew Schultz and all these people, you go, wow, they're giving more than enough permission to their viewers to go, hey, we can all oppose this thing. You don't have to, just because we voted for this, like still be on board with it. Even not all of their audience obviously voted for it, but like they're just like, so it's like, oh, that's great. Like, why would you be, I don't know. I find that to be such a crazy take that it's like, when the destruction of Gaza was going on, I wasn't thinking about lecturing anybody, because it was like, no, we just need as many people to be good on this as we can possibly get. Like, that's really important. And it's really important that like left-wingers are good on war again. And, I just don't see why anyone wouldn't make the simple calculation that like, that's more important than me, being like, hey, you shouldn't have voted for this person or something, which again, maybe not. I mean, maybe we'd all be better off if Kamala Harris was in now, or maybe not. We don't really know, but idea. I'm still, even as disgusted as I am with Trump right now, I still look back and go, the Democrats gave everyone more than enough reason to vote against them. It is what it is. We're pinned in a situation where you got to pick one of two options, and the Democrats were pretty awful for a long time.
No question about that. Well, there's some good news about the left, though. I want to put up this post. This is F16. The cool, hip, chic, radical left is back, Dave. This is Justin Trudeau and Katy Perry. They were at Coachella. Experiencing some of the magic in the Coachella Valley. And this post is particularly wonderful because it's actually puts it perfectly. I want to give credit to the person who posted this. I think their username is Ohio Jesus Twink. The caption of these two just like vibing at Coachella is they're so perfect for each other. It actually makes me emotional, both being failures of liberalism who peaked in 2013. Why weren't you there, Dave? Where were you?
I don't know what this is. I don't go to places like this. Emily, I'm an old man, okay? I'm not in the game of going to concerts. I play with my little kids and then go to work. That's all. Wow. What a weird thing. I just don't understand it. There's something about being
it's like a Disney adult thing.
Yes. Oh, can I tell you? I was at Disney a few weeks ago. You know, I brought my wife and my kids down there. That was a weird way to put it. We all went to Disney. I brought them.
You were with Lindsey Graham.
I was going.
It was you and Lindsey Graham. You got some bubble wands.
I had to have lunch with Lindsay on the Mickey Mouse Express, but I got some time with the family into. We were going to meet Mickey Mouse. Okay, you got to pay extra for this. We're going to meet Mickey Mouse, but this is the real one. You know, in Disney World. Like, this isn't just allegedly. Like a Mickey Mouse. This is no. It's
the
Disney
Midtown
World.
Mickey Mouse.
This is the real Mickey Mouse. Now, that Midtown guy is some Mexican. He just got here today, but this is the real Mickey Mouse. And there was just adults in front of us. And I'm just sitting there with my wife and my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old. And we're sitting there and waiting for two grown-ups to take pictures with Mickey Mouse. And it is the weirdest feeling ever. Like, you really want to go up to them and be like, hey, he's not real. Like, this is a minimum wage worker you're taking a picture with right now. What are you doing? Like, my 4-year-old is getting fussy. Like, can you just leave? It's insane. Anyway, yeah, it's a very we live in a very unserious time. And I do think it's crazy to me. Again, I'm not like some cranky right-wing, you know, crotchety old man. I mean, I am in spirit, I am, but I'm also like, I don't know, I'm a stand-up comedian. I got a lot of friends who live really wild, crazy lifestyles. I used to live a very non-traditional lifestyle. I got married and had kids, and now I live a different, you know, now my life is different, and it's much better. But the fact that I'm not like too judgmental, I get it. One of my best friends in the world is Ari Shafir. I think he just disappeared into the fucking rainforest for 3 months doing an acid trip and came back a different man. You know, like I'm not, but you're like, yo, we're going to have our leaders are like people in their 50s who are going to music festivals and taking pictures with them. And this is too just like bizarre. Like, no, that's not serious. Grown-ups shouldn't behave that way. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, if you want to be judgy, Dave, I want to know where they were during the Sabrina Carpenter set, because woke is back. Some good news, depending on where you are, maybe bad news if you're on the other side of that, but woke is back. Sabrina Carpenter, during her set, gets what she interpreted as a yodel. She ultimately has to apologize for the reaction you're all about to see here in S5.
Is that what you're doing? I don't like it. That's your culture, is yodeling? Is this Burning Man? What's going on? This is weird.
So Dave, some people pointed out that if it had been yodeling that she was making fun of, like just the whitest of the white art forms, it would have been fine. But it was the fact that she was actually had some issue with an Arabic form of expression that was the problem. This is F12. She did apologize for her reactions. She says, "My apologies. I didn't see this person with my eyes and couldn't hear clearly. My reaction was pure confusion, sarcasm, and ill intended." So yeah, woke is totally back. Don't you think, Dave?
Yeah. Well, I guess it probably never left that world, whatever that world is. But woke is not.
She was called Islamophobic, I should say. Like this is it generated a write up in the New York Times. Like this wasn't just random. She got called Islamophobic in mega viral posts and ended up apologizing because of it.
Yeah. Look, woke has receded, but it's not gone. And so there's still a whole lot of stuff like that. Like if she had been just making fun of some, yodeling white Christian, that would have been fine, but this isn't. Now that doesn't mean they're going to be pushing quite as crazy stuff as they were pushing 5 years ago or something like that. Okay, they've backed off of the giving your 8-year-old a lap dance from a dude in a dress or something, but they're,
that didn't happen, but if it did, it was good and it was a blessing of liberty.
Right. Well, these things don't, forces or norms that become so culturally ingrained are never just vanquished. There's people in Russia today who support Stalin. You can never just vanquish a complete. There's neo-Nazis in Germany. There's now some can be more vanquished than others, but it's like you kind of, even if there's a certain percentage, and this is one of the things that was really weird about the 2024 election and Donald Trump winning again, is that a lot of people went you saw all the corporate shills just drop the woke shit. They all went, oh, okay, this isn't a winning issue anymore. Okay, we're done. They didn't. It was the same way that if you remember in 2004, the neocons made gay marriage a big wedge issue because it was 55% of people were against gay marriage. And so they made one of the issues in the 2024 election was a constitutional amendment protecting the sanctity of marriage. It was stupid. They were never going to get a constitutional amendment. It was just let's throw some red meat to the. But then you watched all those neocons. As soon as it became a 55% issue being pro-gay marriage, they all went, yeah, okay, whatever. Then we're pro-gay marriage. None of them actually cared about it. It was just, and you watched a lot of that with the wokeism stuff, where they all, people like Rachel, who is it? AOC takes her pronouns out of her bio or whatever on Twitter. Oh, all of a sudden, forget that. We weren't saying there's no such thing as gender. That was a different time. But, you pump that message into so many people. You got millions of Americans who still believe in that stuff. And it's not as easy as it is for the corporate snakes to just abandon an issue when real, actual human beings made that a part of their identity, that they believed in this. And they kind of thought they had it on some authority because you, an authoritative person, were telling them that. And so it's, I don't know, there's something so disgusting about the people who just pushed these messages. But yeah, no, this is still a reality in the world, is that a lot of people are going to go well, what do you mean? You're allowed to make fun of some person making a sound, but you got it wrong and they were browner than you thought. So whatever. It's so stupid, but it's really toxic and bad that there's people who still believe in that shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is something you and the New York Times Zoomer panel apparently agree on. They did a recent roundtable of Gen Z, and here's a part of that. Quote, in some corners of the world, I think woke is more alive than ever, and it's getting more intense. And that's how they're transgressing. Quote, another one adds, it's definitely coming back. And then another one says, so it's sort of like these two completely different spheres then that you navigate between both when you're reporting on the MAGA right-wing youth movements and when you're moving through Brooklyn. It's two completely different worlds. And Dave, just last question to you. It makes me realize how social media, it doesn't matter if you're hyper right wing or hyper left wing, it's programming everyone to be totally Manichaean. And I guess that's maybe not the worst definition of woke.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think that's true. And it in some ways, it makes it easier than ever to, gauge the temperature of what's going on. But then in some ways it really, does kind of reinforce you into your own little world and your own little bubble. And it's, I think you have to like, you have to really have a curiosity for what's really going on in order to force yourself to think about things like that and to think about like, hey, okay, like, but what am I not seeing? Because like, what's actually going on? What is the, I think about this all the time, and I try I'm kind of lucky in my life that like, I know a lot of comedians, and I'm from New York City, and so I know a lot of people in New York. And then from being in this business, I know people in LA, and I know people. So even though I'm not, I can kind of like, there's a lot of people I can ask, like, what's going on with this group? Like, how are they feeling? How are they? And because I do wonder, I'm like, hey, so in my mind, like all the COVID lies just got completely destroyed and disproven, and we all know that they all lied to us, right? And I do think that that's kind of like the majority view of the Americans. But then you go like, yeah, but what about that hipster in Brooklyn who totally bought into all of it? How is he feeling about this now? Like, and I do think that the general trends of the country represent some of those people being peeled away. And I do think that, at least from the gauge I can get, that the younger people are a little bit more like, there is like an attitude, I think, amongst the younger people now, that the younger people 5 years ago were kind of gay. Like it was kind of, like that seems to be the feeling. They were like, oh, dude, they were just like anything you said. Forget that. We want to be able to make jokes and we want to be able to go back to this. But I guess, look, I don't know if I'm completely right about this, but my feeling is that the left-wing woke stuff has receded. It still infects a huge percentage of young leftists. And what the other ones have come out is a less socially woke, more radically economically leftist kind of version of that. And I think that's what's emerging right now, is the Mamdani kind of effect. Like Mamdani a few years ago might have been tweeting about how queer liberation means defunding the police. Today,
hell yeah,
he will only, which is true, but
they can fact check us. They're not going to be successful.
It's honestly, it's about time people woke up to the fact that if you want queer liberation, you have to defund the police. And so I'm not saying queer liberation is the goal. I'm just saying defunding the police is the way to get there. Anyway, the point is that the affordability crisis is what they're going to be talking about now. Like I think they've kind of learned in some way from these years that like, okay, this social program kind of didn't work. And also we're in this era of fucking everything being way too expensive. And, they call that unaffordability, which people who have ever read a book about economics call currency debasement or, price inflation. But they call it unaffordability, and that's what they're going to run on now. But, since Donald Trump has completely committed to fighting forever wars and, government spending levels that are higher than the Democrats, we're going to be printing a lot of money, and there'll be a lot more higher prices for the Democrats to run against in the next few years.
Dave Smith, host of Part of the Problem. It's so fun to have you on. Thank you for being here. Oh,
thank you so much, Emily. I always enjoy this.
Yes, likewise. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Dave.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
You too. All right, we'll be back with more in just one moment. But first, over the years, I have been clear about this. I'm not just pro-birth, I'm pro-life. And being pro-life means standing with mothers not only before their baby is born, but long after. And that is exactly why I partner very proudly with Preborn. Preborn doesn't just save babies. They make motherhood abundantly possible. They provide free ultrasounds and share the truth of the gospel with women in crisis. And then they stay with real practical help. This includes financial support for up to 2 years. 2 years after the baby is born. This is what true Christ-centered compassion looks like, not just for the baby, but for the mother too. And here's where you can make a difference. Just $28 provides a free life-saving ultrasound. One chance for a mother to see her baby, and when she does, she's twice as likely to choose life. That is a real number. Preborn is trying to save 70,000 babies this year. You can be a part of that. So don't just say you're pro-life, live it. Help save babies and support mothers today. Go to preborn.com/Emily or call 855-601-2229. That's preborn.com/Emily. All right, everyone, we're rounding out the show with Lena Dunham's media tour. She was on The View earlier today. She's out with a new book that really, apparently I haven't read the book yet, but it apparently is a very raw revisiting of the girl's years and her entire journey through the public, or journey in the public eye. It's called Fame Sick, which she explains is a little bit of how the fame made her sick and what it was like being sick with the fame. It's actually, if you even take the sort of political layer of Lena Dunham off of it, I think probably a worthwhile pursuit right now from somebody who's lived in the public eye in the 2010s and now beyond into the 2020s, millennial social media generation. This has transformed not just our daily lives, but also the way that we look outward into the world, the way that we look at celebrities, the way that celebrities look at everyone else, politicians as well, since they're basically the same as celebrities now. That's TMZ's intention in covering DC. They just got Lindsey Graham today. But really, I mean that this is all connected because celebrities and politicians now have a new experience relating to people. We were told it would be a great democratization. We can communicate all in a kind of from the same flat level, and that's obviously not how it's turned out. But Lena Dunham's grappling with a lot of what that meant for her. I think Girls premiered in 2012. If I'm correct on that, it went from like 2012 to 2017, but around that time period. And so here's Lena Dunham talking about the particular experience of her own fame during that time period in a new long interview with the New York Times.
I've annoyed people since I was so small. Like, I was an annoying kid. I was a tryhard. I was loud. I didn't always know how to like move through space with other kids in a way that wasn't a little bit off or disruptive. That's coupled with there was like the intense rage about the female sexuality on the show. There was the intense rage about my body, which is so crazy to look back on now because I was this like little slip of a 26-year-old. And had I known my own powers, I would have behaved very differently. And then like I would be lying if I didn't say that my own way of moving, whether it was through media or how I express myself online or even in my writing, didn't quell it the way that I was spoken about. I mean, that's what so many women's bodies look like. That's not what my body looks like anymore. But I was like full of light. And it's interesting, as I looked at the photos over the course of the show, I could see, it's such a cliche, but it was like the lights just went out.
So I'm going to spoil Girls. Actually, I usually try not to spoil it, but for the purposes of this discussion, if you haven't seen Girls and you don't want it to be spoiled, I highly recommend everybody watches Girls all the way through, finish the last season. But it does end with Lena Dunham's character, Hannah Horvath, having a baby and finding joy in motherhood. And it wasn't intended to be a rebuke of radical feminism, the type of radical feminism that Hannah Horvath, the character, espoused and promoted throughout her young career and her young life. But it actually really did function as one. And this is what I think is so interesting about Lena Dunham's art. And she came of age really at a time professionally when the culture, because of social media, was losing tolerance for artists, because artists were using social media and their own platforms in ways that were more and more, what's the right word for this, kind of cynical, but at the same time, more ephemeral, right? So we had to see Lena Dunham's awful 2012 Obama ad, like comparing voting for the first time to losing your virginity. I mean, it was really like disgusting. Some of our some of it is, yes, it completely makes sense for an artist to behave that way. If you're a good artist, you're probably eccentric and you're probably wacky. And if you have so much contact with normal human beings through social media and interviews and Twitter posts and paparazzi figures, that weirdness is going to be projected, and other people are going to react in a way where it's like, that's weird, that's bad. Your Brooklyn values are out of step with the values of this Iowa Obama voter. What do you think you're doing? But that's part of the challenge of social media, is that it's erased borders and it's brought us all much closer together and in constant communication. And I think you have somebody like Lena Dunham, who's, if you knew nothing about her and you just watched Girls in a vacuum, you never heard of Lena Dunham, you never saw anything from her public profile, I think actually a lot of people would have interpreted it as a pretty honest exploration. So we had to see Lena Dunham's awful 2012 Obama ad, like comparing voting for the first time to losing your virginity. I mean, it was really like disgusting. Some of it is, yes, it completely makes sense for an artist to behave that way. If you're a good artist, you're probably eccentric and you're probably wacky. And if you have so much contact with normal human beings through social media and interviews and Twitter posts and paparazzi figures, that weirdness is going to be projected, and other people are going to react in a way where it's like, that's weird, that's bad. Your Brooklyn values are out of step with the values of this Iowa Obama voter. What do you think you're doing? But that's part of the challenge of social media, is that it's erased borders and it's brought us all much closer together and in constant communication. And I think you have somebody like Lena Dunham, who's, if you knew nothing about her and you just watched Girls in a vacuum, you never heard of Lena Dunham, you never saw anything from her public profile, I think actually a lot of people would have interpreted it as a pretty honest exploration of feminism and its effect on the millennial generation. You could probably do something similar for Gen Z. It clearly had one side that it thought it was promoting, but I think that's what makes it such a rich and interesting show, is that because it was honest, you even saw these challenges to its own foundation. It really was an excellent show, and not always consciously was it making those challenges to its own foundation. So Lena Dunham is constantly doing this. Every show she does, every interview she does, she's constantly doing this. And what's interesting is that, when she says there was so much rage at her body and so much rage at women's sexuality being presented in Girls, of course there's always bad actors, right? There's people who are actually just mean and hateful, and social media brings those people to the forefront. But in terms of like political, cultural rage at her body and about female sexuality, yeah, there was immense discomfort from the public when Lena Dunham was genuinely normalizing. She was in the process of normalizing, as she talks about in this interview, in the process of attempting to normalize the radical feminism that had previously been relegated to faculty lounges. So of course there's going to be rage about that from people who don't want to see the normalization of faculty lounge feminism for their children, their grandchildren, and in their communities. And you can even see in Lena Dunham, who is now, by her own accord, happily married, has left fame, has moved to England, as far as I know, but has found in marriage what she describes as a rock. And in monogamy, presumably at least, what she finds as comfort. And in this like quaint and quiet life, which is exactly what Hannah finds at the end of Girls. I mean, it's almost eerie how prescient the end of Girls is to looking ahead in Lena Dunham's life, where she talks constantly about wanting to just leave the public life and be in bed with books and movies. It's basically in Girls, how she ultimately finds what we're pointed at believing is peace and sort of harmony with nature. It's this very sort of naturalistic feminism. It's almost a nod to earlier generations of feminism. Some of the shots are like that too. They're very humanist. And you hear that every time Lena Dunham opens her mouth, which is why I think she's one of the most interesting artists of her generation. She said in the View interview she did today that the Hannah Horvath line, "I think I might be the voice of my generation," very famous from the first episode of Girls, that was taken seriously by many people. She said that was always supposed to be a joke. And of course it was supposed to be a joke, but it was a joke that came true. That's what's so wild and interesting about Girls. And I think in Lena Dunham, you see somebody who is struggling enormously still to be happy. She apparently in this book writes about sexual trauma she's gone through. Some of that has been public and some of it is very ugly. But here's Lena Dunham, who was by her own accord trying to normalize this promiscuity, this comfort with faculty lounge feminism. And here she is in 2026, all these years later, embracing limits, embracing the limits of her own body, embracing the limits of life, of promiscuity. And she's found solace in monogamy and in a quiet life away from, to again go back to the end of Girls, away from New York City, very intentionally away from New York City, which is, by the way, where she grew up, if I'm remembering correctly. So really, really interesting, sad, poignant recollections here from, reflections, I should say here from Lena Dunham, who always does this. She always just sort of dances in the direction of a really, and very cleverly and artfully dances in the direction of a point that's even more profound than the one she thinks she's making. And I think it's reflective of our generation, certainly, and Gen Z now flailing between trad and anti-trad and trying to figure out what's actually happening. And that's summarized so neatly in the end of Girls. Like, it's not quite trad in the literal political definition of right now, but it's also definitely not feminist in the literal political definition of the left right now. So if you haven't watched it, I recommend watching it. Sad, but in a way, sort of, what's the right word? It's always sad to hear from Lena Dunham because she seems like she'll probably always be a sad person. Also common of artists and people who've suffered trauma in their lives. And her parents were artists, and she talks about some weird stuff she saw as a kid because of that. But man, it's sad to hear her talk about this. But in a way, it's also, I sense she's maybe getting closer to finding some peace and serenity in this life. So that'll do it for an extra long, maybe the longest ever edition of After Party. Thank you all so much for tuning back here Wednesday night with another edition of the show. So stay tuned for that. Please do like, comment, subscribe.
Video for Mentis Wave. Why canceling student debt is an amazingly bad idea. It is a very bad idea. It's awful.
Hey, internets. In this video, I'm just gonna...
It's actually a ridiculous idea. It's taking money from people that have more money and taking money away from poor people and giving it to people that have money. It's actually the craziest redistribution. It's actually hilarious.
To quickly go over the economic illiteracy of canceling all the student debt. This is an idea that's obviously very popular with a lot of college students.
Yeah, because you know why? Because they have student debt. That's why they want to cancel it. It's almost as if they wanna take your money. They want to take your money to pay for their thing. And you know what? It would be the biggest fuck you to the people that were actually responsible and did pay off their debt. Like, think about that. Like, you paid your debt? What a fucking sucker. You telling me you paid off your student debt? What a loser. Right? What an idiot.
recent graduates, and I can definitely see, as someone who was a recent graduate at one time in the past myself, where if you don't think about it from anything other than just a personal, individual level, it can definitely seem to you like you'll benefit from it. But when you think about it a bit more seriously beyond the first order effects that it has, you'll quickly realize it's actually a really bad idea. In fact, it's one of the worst ideas. And I'll explain the problem with it as well as the mentality of the people who have this idea by refuting this little comic right here that has been recently making the rounds again. We got a guy here saying, "I beat cancer, da-da-da," looking very proud of himself, and then saying, if they suddenly find a cure for cancer, now I'm gonna be so...
Wait, you're telling me someone made this shit? Hold on, so you're telling me someone, like a person without AI, someone actually drew this shit? That they took the time to like sit down and open up fucking Studio Paint or whatever the hell, and they drew this out? You can't be serious. You can't be real. You can't be real that like you sat down and you thought like, wow, I'm gonna make this comic and it's gonna make everyone feel like a total retard. You can't be serious. Like what?
Mad. This comic is about student loans. Now, I love this comic, not because it's good, it's a very bad argument, but because it's a good example of how people who believe in Santaism genuinely do not understand market forces. So it's a perfect example of the fractal wrongness meme, where somebody is so wrong about something that it kind of just reveals how they have a critical lack of...
Fractal wrongness. You are not just wrong. You are wrong at every conceivable scale of resolution. Zooming in on any part of your worldview finds beliefs exactly as wrong as your entire worldview. Oh my god, bro. It's like, have you ever seen like those pictures? Like, there's like that picture of like, it was like fucking... like Ash Ketchum or something on like the planet Namek, and like the more that you looked at the more you looked at it, the more you're like, wait, this is wrong. This entire image is wrong. And like the more you looked at it, like the worse it was, because it was like he had a Digimon and then he had like a dual disc. He was on the planet Namek and like he had the Millennium Puzzle around his neck. It was just so bad.
Understanding of the basics of the basics of the basics of what they're talking about, and thus most of everything else they have to say about the subject is probably also wrong. Or at the very least, you can't really take anything else they have to say about it seriously. Because of course, the reasoning in this comic only makes sense if you genuinely believe in what we like to call economic Santaism, which is where people who think that free stuff from the government is genuinely free, that it doesn't come from anywhere. So in other words...
How did they think that? Like... What logical, like the money just grows on the money tree and it's just free? So anyway, stellar humanism.
They just kind of view it as the same as, you know, Santa flying around in his sleigh and producing presents just out of magic thin air for everybody. And the problem, of course, is that it doesn't work that way. To put it very simply, it is, of course, paid by the taxpayer. And due to tax incidents, you will always be paying part of those taxes, regardless of who specifically the taxes target. Which, in this specific case of ending student loan...
Okay, guys, you remember how I told you guys I had a puppet of Marissa that I used to conduct interviews with? It looked exactly like this, but with the witch hat. It was literally this.
Loans is very interesting. So for instance, let's say that we were to pay for free student university education and ending all current federal student loans through, say, a 3 to 5% increase in income taxes, depending on your income level. And what's funny about that is that if you go to college, you will, on average, earn more money throughout your lifetime. In fact, even the quote-unquote useless degrees, those silly liberal arts degrees, they tend to still increase the amount you'll earn throughout your life, but not nearly as much as the actual decent STEM degrees, which I'll argue are the ones you should probably be getting. Which means that if you are in your 30s as a result of your college education, finding yourself in a position where you have a salary of, say, $90K or above, you're going to be a net taxpayer into this system, which means you're still going to be paying back your student loans. In fact, you'll actually, throughout your lifetime, probably end up paying more of those student loans than what you would have paid in the current privatized system. The only time that this is not the case is the people who were rock bottom of the totem pole regarding college education. So in other words, the people who not only went to useless underwater genderqueer dance theory degrees, but also just did nothing to ensure that they would have any kind of career afterwards. Which means that the only...
But that's a lot of the people that want it, though.
Only people who wouldn't end up being net taxpayers into this system anyways, and thus paying back their student loans anyways, would be the lazy ones who spent their college years partying and wasting their money on smoking the ganja instead of actually planning further for their life beyond just getting a degree. So they find themselves with a useless liberal arts major and yet working at Starbucks when they're 35. Which in other words means that making the student loans quote-unquote free not only doesn't actually make it free, but you're actually subsidizing the students who were irresponsible on the dime of the students who were not. And that's
I like Mantis's delivery so much, just like the cadence, like how he talks, or like the way he like kind of bastardizes words. Like I love it. It's like so peak.
Not even counting people who didn't even go to college, which makes this actually a really weird form of taxation where they're kind of taxing the poor.
I like it because I do that too in like real life. Like I love just bastardizing words
in order to pay for the rich, or really taxing the poor in order to pay for the middle class. Because of course, extremely poor people don't even go to college. And while they're not net taxpayers, the taxes they would pay would still go into this, even if they're at the bottom of that 3%. And so in other words, the whole idea is an example of what we call champagne socialism, in that the biggest payoffs would mainly go to lazy, privileged upper middle class kids who through their own hubris viewed going to college as a partying opportunity rather than taking their education seriously. It is an absolutely massive spit in the face to anybody who's, say, born to a poor family, works their butt off in order to get into a good college, takes their classes seriously in order to ensure that they have a decent path to a decent career, and so they can then, through that work, get a better life and then pay those loans back. Imagine being that guy and then being told that, okay, you now have to subsidize the spoiled upper middle class kids who would rather spend all their money fueling their drug addiction than actually taking their life seriously. And when you realize this, when you realize the fact that this idea is really just screwing over responsible people in order to pay for the irresponsible, you realize another problem with the point of this comic, which is that it is a massive false equivalency. The point that the comic is of course making is that it's equating student loans to the concept of someone beating cancer and then being mad at someone beating cancer in the same way that people who manage to pay off their student loans might occasionally get mad at people who would get them for quote-unquote free if we decided to go with the socialist policy of abolishing student debt, which is ridiculous because the economics of these two subjects are completely the opposite. When someone beats cancer and then they find a better cure for that cancer, that doesn't come at the cost to you. It's not like them finding a better cure for cancer will cause your cancer to come back. In fact, in this case, it's more or less a positive sum experience. Because, of course, cancer is a medical science issue. Whenever somebody beats cancer, we generally get...
Also, it sounds great because in the possibility that it comes back, like you're like, what? Like it just doesn't make any sense. It's like so bad. I totally agree with like that, what did he call it again? That fractal, being like fractally wrong. It's so true. It's like, this is unreal.
Better at finding treatment for that cancer because that provides us with data on what works best to beat that cancer depending on whatever cancer you got. So which means that you're automatically benefiting future patients. And the thing is, those patients in the future are also benefiting you because if you beat cancer, the reality is, unfortunately, there's also a good chance that you might get that same cancer again sometime in your life. Which means that if medical science finds a complete cure to the type of cancer that you got, it was most likely due to multiple studies and trials being done on multiple patients who all got the same cancer. And therefore you actually would benefit from them finding that cure, which is completely different from student loans. If you paid back your student loans, that means you probably got a career capable of paying back those loans, which means that if they enact some new policy in order to tax people more in order to make student debt free, well, that positive sum relationship in the case of cancer is not the case. In this instance, you would be the responsible person being forced to pay for the irresponsible person, and you wouldn't be gaining anything out of it. And there's also the issue of cost. In the case of cancer,
This fucking image, bro. Sitting at the bottom of the sea, smoking weed and fucking weaving baskets. That's crazy. Yeah, underwater basket weaving.
everybody who beats
Oh,
cancer
man.
tends to improve the treatment of cancer, which can actually reduce the cost of treating it. Or at least it would if the FDA wasn't corrupt and didn't grant unnatural monopolies on certain treatments. But that's a subject for a different video. Anyways, the point is, going back to universities and costs, you again have the opposite problem. Ending student loan debt would
fuck
not
the
end
government.
college costs. The costs and everything required to run universities and campuses would all still be there. In fact, it would actually incentivize universities to
Just
increase
charge
those
more,
costs.
yeah,
Because if they know that the government is going
Exactly. Ah, man. First order logic thinkers, am I right, guys?
to subsidize those loans by socializing the loans, then they can actually earn more money by jacking up the tuition price. And so student loan forgiveness doesn't
This is like kind of what happens too when I was like literally just thinking, I lost the thread. It is basically, this happens as well with when there's like subsidies and then they're like, oh, okay, so that means you have more money now, so I can increase the price. It's kind of like that.
lower the price, it makes it even more, which means that students in the future who are responsible will end up also paying more, which means that this comic is comparing a situation that directly harms you to a situation that directly benefits you, and pretending like they are the same thing, which means that the person who made this comic and the people spreading it unironically do not understand the difference between positive and negative.
Wait, the only reason higher pay and debt forgiveness doesn't work is because the rich are fucking bastards, says Tazuto. The reason higher pay and debt for what? What the fuck? What the hell? Tazuto, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? Higher pay and debt forgiveness doesn't work is because the rich are bastards? You know, the incentive for like making more, I'm assuming what you're saying is that rich people take too much money from they're taking too much money from the workers. Is that what you mean? You know, the reason why business people make money is because it's really a pain in the ass to like actually, rich people and companies they own refuse to lower costs. Wait, rich people and the companies they own rich people and companies they own refuse to lower costs? Wait, what? Wait, what? Wait, hold on. Don't you guys always complain about companies lowering costs by like cutting corners? What do you mean? What do you mean? Rich people and the companies refuse to lower costs? Don't they always try to lower costs? I feel like businesses do that all the time. Much to the complaining of like the, you know, the usual suspects. You mean lower prices? You have multiple water Tazuto, are you experiencing fractal wrongness right now?
Some. So, yeah, like I said earlier,
You aren't getting the point? Oh, I mean, you're not explaining it. I don't know what point you're making. What is the point that you're making? oftentimes the company, the owners of the company are a smokescreen used by real villains that are like uncontrolled inflation. Investors that demand record-breaking profits year after year and then count it as good as last year as a failure. That and the government, that and the people in the government that are giving their friends cushy jobs and wasting money. Yep.
Totally wrong. Anybody who makes this argument is effectively admitting that they do not understand very basic things about how the world works. They're only really thinking about it from the standpoint of wanting to not have to pay back their loans, and that's pretty much it. That's the extent of their reasoning. And that's sadly the good faith interpretation. The bad faith interpretation would be that they do understand why this is wrong. They fully understand why comparing.
But they just want to steal from people. Yeah, fuck them. Like I don't want to pay off my loan. Everyone else deserves to pay it back for me. That's the bad.
Subsidizing irresponsibility to something that deals with the advancement of medical science is obviously a very silly and very ridiculous false equivocation, and they're just pretending not to because they're socialists and they want to advance the ideology.
I love this like image of the fucking. It's so funny.
Socialism, facts and evidence be darned. And so they just pretend to not understand things in order to gaslight people. The reality is you took out a loan, you should pay it back. That's how student loans work. And I know it's painful. I mean, I've been there myself. Getting those bills right after you graduate as you're just starting your career is not fun, but it's the right thing.
I'm so glad I didn't go to college, guys. Holy shit. What a... Oh...
order to gaslight people. The reality is you took out a loan, you should pay it back. That's how student loans work. And I know it's painful. I mean, I've been there myself. Getting those bills right after you graduate as you're just starting your career is not fun, but it's the right thing.
I'm so glad I didn't go to college, guys. Holy shit. What a... Oh... What a relief.
To do. You borrowed that money under the promise that you would pay them back, under the bet that you would be making more money in the future.
I thought
now,
you did.
Sure,
No, I didn't. I only went for a short amount of time, so it wasn't very much.
Could make the complaint here that the younger generations, us millennials and Gen Z, we were oversold the idea of college education by the boomers, and that the lifestyle promised to us by them was based on a world that arguably doesn't exist anymore. But the thing is, that's more of a big picture problem. It's more of an issue with the decline of Westernism in general, which has overwhelmingly been caused by socialist policies and the ballooning of the state, of which canceling student loan debt would just make that a bigger problem, which is what tends to happen when you blame the symptom of the problem rather than the root cause of the problem, which is essentially what the whole student debt crisis here is.
Yeah,
it's kind of the same fallacy of people blaming.
It's pretty typical for people to not find the root cause of the problem and just blame the symptom and try to fix the symptom. It's actually one of the biggest issues in like literally everything in life. Like literally every point in life, almost everything. Like companies, ideology, the government, like everything, all decision makers is solving for the symptom and not the root.
The landlord for the fact that they owe rent, rather than blaming our regulators for intentionally limiting the supply of housing and thus making housing unaffordable. Same issue here. It's our corrupt relationship between businesses and the state.
The government.
And
it's always the government.
Combined with flooding the West with
what did I say, chat? Like you can trace almost everything that sucks back to the government. Like they're just so bad. Like anytime the government wants to do something, you just say no. It's just awful.
Between businesses and the state and regulatory capture, combined with flooding the West with welfare recipients from the third world and artificially reducing the number of businesses that can even offer a decent job in the first place, that is at fault here. And so when you're...
Guys, I'm gonna be real. We need to we might have to just stop immigration. We might have to just, we might have to just say, yeah, maybe no more. Maybe no more. Not for a little bit, at least. I feel like we need to fix some shit before we do more. It's just a little bit too bad right now.
Blaming the fact that the degree itself cost a lot of money, well, that's just kind of short-sighted.
That won't work, says Tazuto. Why not? Wait, Tazuto, why won't it work? I'm just curious. Because they will keep taking our money anyways? Wait, what? Because they will keep... Who? Wait, what? So immigration won't work because they'll take our money? Like, who? the juices. Oh my god, I saw a video. Never mind. I don't. I saw a video about a person that like on X about a person who like had to get his tooth removed and like oh my god, like it just came out of nowhere, man. If you know the video I'm thinking about, it just came out of nowhere. I can't show it on stream, but it's like so out of nowhere. We free the billions not paying for anything immigrant related, so us Americans don't have to pay much taxes, right? No. Well, you know, actually, I agree with you on that. We should have lower taxes, Tazuto. Wait, actually? Wait, hold on. Really? Tazuto, you think we should lower taxes? Like, actually? Wait, Tazuto, can you repeat that? Can you say you want them to lower taxes? Is that what you mean? Am I steel manning? Am I straw manning you? It's not, right? You want there to be lower taxes. Like, actually? Oh, I was so close. I was so Tazuto, we got so close. We got so close. Oh my god, we got so close. Why? Oh, you were almost there, Tazuto. You're almost there. We'll get him next time.
And fails to see the bigger picture. The only case where I could see where it kind of makes sense that you shouldn't have to pay back your student loans is in those very rare edge case scenarios where you are somebody who went to one of those private college schools that actually scammed and misled their students, and it was proven in court that they scammed their students by directly lying to them about what their campus had to offer. And there are some cases where, yeah, that has been proven in court. But the thing is, in that case, it still shouldn't be the taxpayer that would pay back those loans. There's no need to subsidize that. In that case, it should be the scammers who should have to pay that loan back. It should be the people who misled those students, which has happened before. Like, for example, there was a school, Les Cordon Bleu, that was found guilty in court of misrepresenting itself to prospective students. And so they had to pay back a portion of the tuition. But again, that's a very edge case scenario. That's very rare. And of course, that sort of thing doesn't require the state and the IRS to get involved. But let's be honest, none of the people who are spreading this comic and this argument around fit into this bill. I mean, maybe some of them do, but in their case, they should be filing something known as the borrower's defense to repayment, not demanding that all student loan debt be canceled just because they happen to get scammed. That would, of course, be very silly. I would not be surprised at all if they were mostly disproportionately a bunch of Redditors who went in for some useless liberal arts degree and attended just the standard local state university.
Dude, like Mentis's images are so
liberal
good.
Arts degree and attended just
Mentis's like images are so peak. Oh my god.
The standard local state university rather than any career-specific school. They're not pushing this idea because they got scammed. They're pushing this idea because they believe that the state is Santa Claus and they want free stuff. And TLDR, it's wrong because that's just not true. That's not how the economy works.
It's not, because it comes from somewhere. Why don't we just cancel all student loan debt? Because, like, I mean, why not? It's like, dude, you know, it comes from somewhere, right?
Works. You took out a loan, pay it back. And that's all I have to say. Thanks for watching.
Wait, what? Are you talking to me, Tazuto? When you said yes, our taxes that we already pay, are you talking to me? Ragnar, thank you for the 100 bits. Isn't it funny that people who are produced by the system also happen to be complete useful idiots that deflects responsibility from the government? What are the odds, huh? Wait, are you talking to me, Tazuto? Are you talking to me about, like, how we hold on, wait, Tazuto. Let me ask you a question. You want to cancel student loan debt? Do you want to cancel it? Is that what you're saying? It works in other countries? Wait, where? I actually don't know about this. Is that real? Did that happen somewhere? Hold on. Hey, yo, Grok, is this true? Singapore? You want to know a hot take, though, chat? Like a really, really, really hot take? If I actually could cancel student loan debt, 100%. Like if I had like a Thanos snap that I could cancel the student loan debt and like it would not cause any negative externalities to like any other people, like taxes or anything like that, I still wouldn't do it. still wouldn't do it. That's not a hot take. I feel like Tazuto would think that was a hot take. Cause like, why wouldn't you do that if you could just like, if I could snap my fingers and instantly create the value equal to, you know, like myself. Like say me as a, okay, put it this way. Say Leaflet is like super rich. Say like I created a thing where I like generated money from out of nothing. Like I was able to, I don't know, I found like a meteor or something full of gold and I had all this free money and I could use my own personal private money to alleviate student loan debt. I wouldn't do it. Like if the alternative was like if I had in one hand, so say I was suddenly given like a big pile of value, not money, you know, because you know inflation and stuff like just let's ignore inflation for the purposes of this argument. In one hand, the chunk of gold that I have evaporates into nothing, and in the other hand, I use it to pay off people's student loan debt. I would rather it evaporates into nothing. I'd rather it literally disintegrates into ash than give it to them. Because I think it's bad for society. How much money does the government bail out of the banks every year that owns all of the loan debt offices? Oh no, well, Tazuto, I disagree with that too. I don't think the government should be fucking bailing out companies either. So, you know, I don't, just because I think that is bad doesn't mean that I would, it doesn't mean I have to like agree with the other thing. Like just because they do that, I can still disagree with that, which I do, by the way. Rhonda says I would because it would give relief to the people that are being responsible and paying it off by rewarding. And yes, I would also pay off the irresponsible ones too, but it wouldn't actually fix the irresponsible ones' bad habits. They would just get into debt again. So you'd ultimately only help the responsible ones. That would have to pay it off anyway. No, I still wouldn't do it. I still wouldn't do it because they said that they'd pay it off. So like I wouldn't do it. It creates bad you create bad people by doing that. Let the banks fail? Sure. I think it's so the problem is it is a bad thing if so let's be like real here. It's a bad thing if the banks fail because obviously it's going to hurt a lot of people. But like I almost feel like you gotta let it happen. You know what I mean? Like if you bail them out, it creates a worse scenario, a worse precedent. Anyway.
Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. And if you like my content, you can support me on Ko-Fi, Subscribe Star, by buying some merch, or by becoming a member of the channel. Thanks again for watching. That is all. Till next time.
Nice. I love the Mentis vid. My favorite. Mentis is one of my favorite channels. All right, here you go. I'll link it to you guys. Student debt is a choice. It is. It really is. When you have student debt, you tell them that you tell them that you're gonna pay it off, and you're aware that you have it. Now, you want to hear an advanced argument? You want to hear an advanced argument? It goes like this. Hear me out. Yeah, well, you know, you have to understand that you signed it. You signed the thing. You understood that you had to pay back the student loan debt, and you signed it anyway. So too bad. Yeah, well, I was only 18. I'm not. I wasn't capable of making that decision. So what are you saying about trans children then, huh? Can you say that again for the microphone? I kind of want to ask someone that does that. It would be great, actually. Checkmate!
You're my sweet baby. We'll move to Cali. ERP on Discord. Characters from Concord. No one triggers me. Just right like you. I'll cancel everyone on Twitter from my boo.